try to share one per family. Anybody need the new Sunday school lesson books coming out? I know Brother Greg passed out some of them. Does anybody need any books, the new ones? Hey, anybody need one? You're stuck with me this week. Matt's here. I thought I seen him. Yeah. Thought I seen Matt came in, but oh, there he is. He got a hole in his head, so he can't teach this week. He had a wisdom tooth cut out. But I say you got another. But what's that? Explain that. Mom said explain that. But no, he had his wisdom tooth cut out, and you're stuck with me this week. So he was going to teach, and then last night he was feeling a little rough. And I think, yeah, that's how it goes with those wisdom teeth. And so I had studied some, but I crammed, so I'm never ready. You could ask Lisa. I never feel like I'm ready. I study, and I realize after a while that you can't do it without the Lord anyways. So you can study, and you can't do it without the Lord. We can't do anything without the Lord. But I told Lisa last time I felt like I was all over the place. But this, I'm going to try to stick with it and stick with the point that the Lord gives to us. So we're in the last. I got to turn those down there. Those middle white ones, Scott. We're in the last lesson of this quarter, I would say. 2 Kings and 25. And I was thinking this whole quarter, actually the last two, I think, has just been Israel up and down. And it was a good king and a bad king, good king and a bad king. And I thought it was never meant for him, Brother Bruce, to have a king anyways, but Jesus Christ, God himself, that was supposed to be their king, but the Lord gave them what their hearts desire, and it was never, they would have a good one here and there, but more bad than good. They had more bad than good, and he is supposed to be the king of our life, and anything else in our lives that's above him is an idol. We've talked about that many times, and I want to get in our lesson. I want to start our lessons in 1 Kings 25. Sister Tammy, do you have your book or 2 Kings 25? I'm sorry. Would you read the introduction of our lesson, or who? And then. Yep. Yep. Go ahead. I didn't open up this morning. I want to open up this morning with prayer. That was our introduction. So basically, we're at Israel had already been abolished, basically, been overtaken a few years before this, and now all that's left is Judah and Jerusalem, which Judah did have was Jerusalem at that time. That was that was where the temple was. That's where they went to worship. So now this is under attack. This is it. Israel, or Judah, or the whole nation is Israel. We knew there was a split. Judah went to the south and Israel to the north. When that kingdom went down, there was a split there. And so now Israel had fallen, and now Judah is getting ready to fall. And all this has happened. God had promised the promised land. He brought them out of Egypt. And God had blessed them over and over and over, and they continued to turn their backs on God. Continued. Bad kings and bad choices. And so now we're down to the last straw. Babylon had already taken over pretty much at this point, Judah. And he had put in a ruler, a king, Zedekiah, that Nebuchadnezzar appointed. So that's where we're at. I'm going to have Dad open us up and take up the offering. We know that the Old Testament's not in chronological order. We know that. It's all over, really. And it's not, God has it how he wants it, but it's in. So basically what we're studying here in Kings, this is also the time of Daniel. It's also the time of parts of Jeremiah that's taken place. And so we're going to start in Jeremiah 38 because Zedekiah started out doing the right thing. He went to the prophet of God. He went to Jeremiah. And Jeremiah tried to warn him. It was God's will that they be overtaken and go into Babylon, that Judah and Israel. Because was it God's will for this in the beginning? No, he knew what was going to happen. But at this time, they had turned their backs on God. They had turned their backs on God as a nation. It wasn't meant for Zedekiah to be their king. This was a man appointed a king by an outsider, Nebuchadnezzar, Babylon, which is, what is it in our modern time? Iran, I believe, or Iraq, you're right. Babylon is Iraq, Persia is Iran. So this is modern, basically Iraq. So we got this outside king, Nebuchadnezzar appointed a king for Israel. That's how bad it had gotten. But this was prophesied because God had given it to Jeremiah what was going to happen. He's seen the fall of Israel and the kingdom of Israel. I've said from the beginning of the time that God had a plan from the very beginning to bring Jesus. This was all pointing that man's sin and that man will fall and that God's kingdom will stand. So this is all pointing to Jesus Christ, and we need a Savior. The whole Old Testament is pointing to Jesus Christ and that we need a Savior and that we will fall. The Bible says that all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. We all have fallen, and no kingdom will stand under a man. It's going to fall because they get within themselves and they fall. The only ones that stood and they even had problems was David, and David had problems. He had sin in his life. Solomon, the best time that Israel ever had, he fell. So man will fall, but Jesus Christ will not. This is pointing to a need of a Savior. Brother Rodney, are you going to say something? Yep. Well, that's exactly right. Israel had already destructed 3 years, I think, before this. Now all that's left is Jerusalem and Judah. You know what support? That was their place of worship. That's just where they had to go to. This is the main thing. This is where the temple was. Now it's hitting the final straw of that disconnect from God, from Jerusalem or from Israel. And that's where we're at. But this was prophesied. Jeremiah tried to warn. Zedekiah went to Jeremiah trying to tell him or asking for advice. He didn't want to hear it, though. And this is what it says. We're starting in 14, chapter 38 of Jeremiah, verse 14. It says, Then Zedekiah the king sent and took Jeremiah the prophet unto him into the third entry that is in the house of the Lord. And the king said unto Jeremiah, I will ask thee a thing. Hide nothing from me. Look where they were. They were in the house of the Lord. Then Jeremiah said unto Zedekiah, If I declare it unto thee, wilt thou not surely put me to death? And if I give thee counsel, wilt thou not hearken unto me? You know why Jeremiah is saying this? Every time he told them the truth before, they put him in prison. They beat him up. They didn't want to hear the truth. That was Jeremiah's whole ministry. And that's why he got so discouraged. He's saying, Are you going to have me killed? And so Zedekiah, Zedekiah, this is verse 16, the king swears secretly unto Jeremiah, saying, As the Lord liveth, that made us this soul, I will not put thee to death, neither will I give thee into the hand of these men that seek thy life. Then said Jeremiah unto Zedekiah, Thus saith the Lord, the God of hosts, the God of Israel, If thou wilt assuredly go forth unto the king of Babylon, princes, then thy soul shall live, and this city shall not be burned with fire, and thou shalt live in thine house. He's telling them right here, if you go to Babylon, let them take over you, the house of Israel, the Jerusalem will stand, this temple. This house will stand. It won't be burned. But if thou wilt not go forth to the king of Babylon's princes, then shall this city be given unto the hands of the Chaldeans, and they shall burn it with fire, and thou shalt not escape out of their hand. And Zedekiah the king said unto Jeremiah, I am afraid of the Jews that are fallen to the Chaldeans, lest they deliver me into their hand, and they mock me. But Jeremiah said, They shall not deliver thee. Obey, I beseech thee, the voice of the Lord which I speak unto thee, so it shall be well unto thee, and thy soul shall live. But if thou shalt refuse to go, this is the word that the Lord has showed me. He told him flat out what's going to happen. And he said the Chaldeans, which the Chaldeans were with the Babylonians, really. I think they were just another group of people with Babylon. They worked with Babylon. If you go over into Daniel, it talks about them with the Chaldeans. And actually, that's where I think the astrologers and the magicians and all of them came out of the Chaldeans. They were just, in the eyes of Babylon, a smart group of people who Nebuchadnezzar turned to. So now let's go back to our lesson. So here, this was over in Jeremiah that Zedekiah got the warning. So let's go back to 2 Kings 25, our lesson. And this is where we start out. So this is the same time frame that's talking about there. And so then it came to pass in the 9th year of his reign, in the 10th month, and the 10th day of the month of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came he and all his hosts against Jerusalem, and pitched it against it, and they built forts against it around about. And it said it took years for this to happen, for these to overcome a city, especially like Jerusalem. They would build mounds up to the walls, and then they would start starving them out. So this took time to happen. Jerusalem, you got to remember, under Solomon, it was huge. It was the greatest city in the world. So this took time to happen. And the city was besieged unto the 11th year of the king of Zedekiah, and on the 9th day of the 4th month, a famine prevailed in the city, and there was no bread for the people of the land. And the city was broken up, and all the men of war fled by night by the way of the gate between two walls, which is by the king's garden. Now the Chaldees were against the city round about, and the king went the way toward the plain. And the army of the Chaldees pursued after the king and overtook him in the plains of Jericho, and all his army was scattered from him. So they took the king, brought him up to the king of Babylon, to Riblah, and they gave judgment upon him. And they slew the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes, and put out the eyes of Zedekiah, and bound him with fetters of brass, and carried him to Babylon. And in the 5th month, on the 7th day of the month, which is the 19th year of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came Nebuchadnezzar, the captain of the guard, Zaradan, captain. This is a leader of the army for Babylon. Captain of the guard, a servant of the king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem. So basically, Zedekiah ignored the word from the prophet Jeremiah. He totally ignored it. And he did his own thing. And he was worried about what the leaders of Jerusalem would think of him. That's what it, don't say it right, but that's what he had said over in Jeremiah. He was worried about, and he actually started going to these little places around him to get help outside of Jerusalem. You imagine that, what they went from? So he was appointed by Nebuchadnezzar, but he went against him because of the leadership in Jerusalem. And he went against what, and you could see him wanting to be a king of Jerusalem and saying, hey, this is what we used to be. We could raise up another army. But he had already been told by Jeremiah what was going to happen, and he went against it. So now Nebuchadnezzar let the Chaldeans, and then now he got a new leader here, Nebuzaradan, captain of the guard of the servant of the king of Babylon. Now they're coming in. And now he just seen his whole family wiped out in front of him. And I thought about that. That's what sin will do to our lives. When you want to get out of sight of God's will, when you want to play, this thing all started from Solomon and letting the worldly things come in. And I thought about that. That's exactly what it does to our life. And I prayed about where to go with this lesson. And I thought about this is an example of what sin and playing with the world would do to our lives. And I've gotten into, let's go over to Colossians. Chad, will you go to, I think it's Colossians 3, chapter 5. Oh, Chad, step out there. Okay, Matthew, you probably have a hard time reading. But I'll just go ahead and read it. Paul gives a warning of mixing with the world in Colossians chapter 3. And I thought about this, and I've said it many times. All through the Old Testament, their issues was wanting to mix in with the world. When Solomon went in there, the kingdom was, it had gold beyond measure. It was the richest kingdom ever. It was, you can imagine how beautiful it was. And when this happened, and we see when Nebuchadnezzar comes in here, he goes into this temple. I'm going to go ahead and let's read this here a little bit, a few verses back in 25, and then I'm going to jump over to Colossians chapter 3. But they went in and overtook the temple. And that's what this world does to this body, this spiritual, if you let it as a Christian. Israel kept wanting to play with the world. God would bless them, and then as soon as God started blessing them with riches, they'd start letting worldly things come in, letting other idols, other ways of worship come into Israel. And every time they fell. Solomon had many different wives come in, and each one of them brought their different beliefs, and it overtook Solomon. And that's when that kingdom started to fall. But I thank God, and I said it before, he spared a seed of Solomon. And that's where that Judah come from. And I thank God for that. But I'm going to read here a few more, start out at 9. It tells you what happened to the house of the Lord And can you imagine how brokenhearted these people of Jerusalem were? Basically, they went in, Nebuchadnezzar, they took all the mighty people, took them into Babylon. The only ones that was left in Jerusalem was the poor ones to tend the vineyards. That's all that Babylon cared about. They knew they had all these vineyards in there, and they were blessed. Jerusalem was blessed with food and all this stuff. So all was left is basically they left the farmers there to farm that land, and they took everybody else out into Babylon. But you can imagine what happened. This is what sin does. And he burnt the house of the Lord and the king's house. All the houses of Jerusalem and every great man's house burnt with the fire. And all the army of the Chaldeans that were with the captain of the guard break down the walls of Jerusalem. When we read this, I want you to think of your spiritual life and what happens when sin comes in. Now the rest of the people that were left in the city and the fugitives that fell away to the king of Babylon, with the remnant of the multitude, and Nebuzaradan and the captain of the guard carry away. But the captain of the guard left the poor of the land to be vine dressers and husbandmen. And the pillars of brass that were in the house of the Lord, and the bases and the brazen sea that was in the house of the Lord, did the Chaldees break into pieces and carried the brass out of to Babylon. And the pots and the shovels and the snuffers and the spoons and the vessels of brass wherewith they ministered took they away. And the fire pans and the bowls and such things as were of gold and silver, and of gold and of silver. In silver the captain of the guard took away. The two pillars of one sea, the bases which Solomon had made for the house of the Lord. The brass of all these vessels was without weight. The height of the one pillar was 18 cubits, and the chapiter upon it was brass. And the height of the chapiter 3 cubits, and wreathen work and pomegranates and capiters round about all the brass like unto these had the second pillar with wreathen work. And the captain of the guard took Seraiah the chief priest, Zephaniah the second priest, and the three keepers of the door. And out of the city he took offers so that it was set up over the men of war, and 5 men of them that were in the king's presence, which were round about in the city, and the principal scribe of the host, which mustered the people of the land, and 80 men of the people of the land that were found in the city. And Nebuzaradan, captain of the guard, took these and brought them to the king of Babylon, to Riblah. And the king of Babylon smote them and slew them at Riblah in the land of Hamath, so Judah was carried away out of their land. So I'm going to stop right there, but basically you can see that all this stuff that took everybody from all around the world brought in all these riches into this temple. It was beautiful. All gone because of sin. It's very sad. And I thought about that, and I thought about in our spiritual life, and I've said it before, I always kind of turn to material things. I said we can put material things as idols in our life. And I look at my own weaknesses. I love to fish. And I love cars. And if I put those things in front of God, and it could be easy to do, those would be my idols. This world looks at idols, we look at idols and we think of man-made idols that were built so people could see. But anything that we put before God in our life is an idol. And I thought about that. I said, but I got thinking, this goes beyond that. And I thought about what Paul said, we wrestle not with principalities or flesh and blood, but with the principalities and darkness of this world. That's what we wrestle with. And I thought about we live in a world and a society now that wants to flirt with the world. See how close, as Christians, I'm talking about Christians, how close can we live to the world? And I'm preaching to myself. I started seeking and I thought about this. This was what happens when Israel did it. They started flirting with the world, and they came in and destroyed their worship. That temple had everything in it, and that gold represent purity. That's what it represented the best that they had, and God gave them. It represented the blessings of God. So when they came in there, they separated them from God. It says right here, this was the end of Judah. Judah was hauled out. So their worship, Judah, that's what it represented, worship. Jerusalem, their connection to God, that temple, was gone. And that's what happens when sin comes in. But I thought about, we talked about idols that we put in. But I thought about, we live in a society that says, and I think about it as Christians, it's like, how close can I talk like the world? How far can I go and talk like and sound like the world as a Christian? How many places can I go and flirt with the world and go to worldly places? And it seems like that's what the Christians want to do. We want to see how close we can get and flirt with the world and straddle that line. How close, I thought about our talk, our walk, where we go, our bodies, what we look like. We seem like we want to see how close can we dress like the world or look like the world. And I thought about it. It's to me, it's not all about that. It's not about what you look like, but the problem is a heart problem. Is when you want to separate yourself. You don't want to separate yourself to God. And I said it's not about looks or what you dress, how you dress, but the problem is when your heart is wanting to look and be like the world, you want to talk like. That's when the devil will creep in. And I thought about that. I said, what I watch on my phone, what I watch on TV. Sometimes we're saying, well, how far can I go till it's wrong? How much can I talk like the world till it's wrong? How many places can I go where the world goes till, how far can I push it? We're playing with fire. We're allowing the place for the devil to come in and destroy this temple that God has given us. And when people say, is it wrong to do this? Is it wrong to do that? And I said, if you're asking that question, most likely you know it's wrong. I found that with myself. It's like, what I'm looking at on my phone, is this wrong to look at? How far, if I'm asking that question, then I need to. These things are separating us. We need to, and when I think about this thing, we need to focus on our prayer life. It's more than me putting. We need the things that are basic. Going to church, we know that's what we need to do, to be with our brothers and sisters. It's more than that. It goes beyond just going to church every Sunday. It's more than just me putting idle things in front of God, like a car or a fishing or like things I like to do, or sports. A lot of people like sports. It's more than just that. It's me and my worship with God. It's my prayer life with God. It's my Bible time with God. It's my relationship with the Lord. That's what it is. And this is where, if we play with the world, and if we don't keep up with that prayer life and that time with God, the world will creep in. And like I said, I've had so many people ask me, do you think it's wrong for me to wear this? Or do you think it's wrong for me to go here or to take a drink here and there? If you're asking that question, then it's wrong for you. You're wanting to flirt with the world, and it never led anywhere good. And through all this time, and through kings, where you've seen a good king, they were always flirting, seeing how far they can get close to the world, and it would creep into Israel. It would creep into the temple, which is this in our life. It's in here. It creeps in, and it will destroy your relationship with God. It can't dwell. The devil and the God can't dwell both. They can't dwell in this temple, one or the other. Go ahead, sister. Yeah, go ahead.
What I was going to say is if we stay in tune with the Holy Spirit, He leads us, and we'll know
Yep.
if we're doing something that going somewhere or doing something that we shouldn't,
Right.
or buying something that we shouldn't.
Right.
You know, He lets us know. But I also think that we can still enjoy things.
Yep.
You know, you can enjoy fishing.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't go crazy with it.
Right.
Let God, let God lead you there.
Right.
You know, He wants us to enjoy things, but we just know our place.
We got to have God, family, and church, and then the world's got to be out here. We got to separate ourselves, Brother Dell. Yeah. Yeah. Right. I was thinking of that when I read that. It says we wrestle not against flesh and blood. It's not talking about this flesh. We do wrestle with this flesh. It's mean I don't have my battle isn't with you. It's not with the world. It's with the principalities of the world and my flesh. I do wrestle with this flesh. Because that's why I was saying our flesh wants to do the things of the world. And if we find ourselves wanting to see how close we can live to the world and serve God too, we're going to fall. We will fall. We want to see how close can I live to God. That should be the question. Not how close can I live to the world and get away with it. It's how close can I live to God. I don't want to go and see how much I can flirt with it. But that's what the flesh wants to do. I'm talking to myself. This is the battle that I wrestle with this flesh. It's that battle that Paul talked about. Wrestle with the flesh. Yeah. 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 Yep. I'm going to turn over here to Colossians. I said that earlier, but before I get over there, I want to see, not only did this affect Zedekiah, and I've said this many times before, of him going against what God said and allowing the idol worship in the temple and in Jerusalem, it affected his soul. He sat there and watched all of his family murdered and killed. It destroyed his family. What you do in your spiritual walk, well, it does affect other people around you. And I thought about that. He sat there and watched his whole family, his sons, killed. And then they killed him. But let's go over to Colossians chapter, I think it's 3. I didn't mark that one. I wasn't sure I was going to go there, but it says, if ye then be risen with Christ, seek those things which are above, where Christ sitteth on the right hand of God. Set your affection on things above, not things on this earth. For ye are dead, and your life is hid with Christ in God. When Christ, who is our life, shall appear, then shall ye also appear with him in glory. Mortify therefore your members which are upon the earth, fornication, uncleanness, inordinate affection, evil concupiscence, and covetousness, which is idolatry. And I wanted to focus because it caught my attention, that word inordinate affections. And that is, I looked it up, and I like what it said. It said excessive, uncontrolled desires to things other than God. And I thought about that. I thought, man, that's a word that we overlook because we don't. I didn't know what it meant. And I looked at it and read it again. Excessive, uncontrolled desires to things other than God. And that's right there. I mean, that's anything worldly that's we can't control, that overtakes us. It could be, you fill in the blank. Because I can go and start labeling sins, and I don't want to do that. Because anything that controls us and excessive and separates us from God is a sin. For which things sake, the wrath of God cometh in children of disobedience, in the which that ye also walked sometime when ye lived in them. But now ye also put off all these, angers, wrath, malice, blasphemy, filthy communication out of your mouth. And I thought about that, and I said, I've seen so many people anymore that say, I'm a Christian, but then you hear them talk like the world. And they say, well, where does the Bible say that? I don't know how you get any plainer than that. It's pretty clear. Lie not one to another, seeing that ye have put off the old man with his deeds, and have put on the new man, which is renewed in knowledge after the image of him that created him. Where this is neither Greek nor Jew, circumcision, uncircumcision, barbarian, Scythian, bond nor free, but Christ is all and in all. Put on therefore as the elect of God, holy and beloved bowels of mercy, kindness, humbleness of mind, meekness, long-suffering. And then we can go on there, but I'm going to stop right there. But this, I thought about this, and this is where sin leads. And it looks like this was the end of Jerusalem. It looked like this was the end of worship and separation, but it wasn't the end. And we go back to 2 Kings there. I'm going to actually go to 2 Samuel. You can go back to the lesson. And I said this before. This is 2 Samuel 7. And this is a verse that God told David from the beginning. And thine house and thy kingdom shall be established forever. Before thy throne shall be established forever. So if this was the end here, and they killed everybody, and it looked like the bloodline of David, even the seed that he said he would bring Christ, where was that going to continue on at? How was that going to continue on? Because there was nobody left. But if we look over here in 2 Kings 24, and he was not a good person, but he's still from the bloodline of David. It said in 24, verse 11, or 12, and Jehoiakim, the king of Judah, went out to the king of Babylon, and he and his mother and his servants and princes and his officers, and the king of Babylon took him in the 8th year of his reign. He was like 18 when he took leadership. He was from the last one ahead, I think his great-grandfather, one of them was Hezekiah. He was probably one of the last good leaders, godly men. But Jehoiakim was taken into prison at 18 years. Well, he had been older than that, probably in his 30s by then. He became leader at 18. He was a bloodline of David. Remember, and I just read that right there where it says that David's kingdom would go on. Let's go back to our lesson in 25 there. I know we're jumping around. But in 27, verse 27, I think it was, or 26. It says, and it came to pass in 27, in the 7th and 13th year of the captivity of Joachim, king of Judah, in the 12th month, on the 7th and 20th day of the month of Merodach, king of Babylon, in the year that he began to reign, did he lift up the head of Joachim, king of Judah, out of prison. So here this seed, they thought, I'm sure that they thought they had destroyed this kingdom, and that the seed was destroyed. But this Jehoiakim was from the blood. He was the last one. He was the last one left. And he said that king, it was the bloodline. They said here he was sitting in prison the whole time, Brother Bruce. God's plan was protected. That bloodline that it was, he promised David here that he would bring and his kingdom would be forever. This kingdom is, I've said it before, is not pointing to, he wasn't pointing to an earthly kingdom. He was pointing to a heavenly kingdom. That kingdom that when God said, you can destroy this temple in 3 days, I'll raise it up. It was talking about his kingdom and this heavenly kingdom. That bloodline was still protected, and Christ came through that bloodline of Jehoiakim that was sitting there the whole time, and I'm sure that the devil sitting there thinking, that, okay, they're done. I've destroyed Israel. I've destroyed Judah in that temple. And it's right, he said it was protected. It was protected there the whole time, and he said he was released out of prison. And that bloodline continued through, and that's where David, that's where Christ came out of. But I want to jump over here also in Daniel chapter 2. This is the same time frame. So we don't think about it, but the 3 Hebrew children and Daniel was probably taken in that captivity right there. It's the same time frame in Kings right here. It was the same. So they were, all this was, God had his plan protected. When he told Jeremiah that let it happen, let Babylon take you over, he knew what he was doing. He knew he had Jehoiakim, the seed of David there. He knew he had the 3 Hebrew children there, and that his plan would be fulfilled, bringing in Christ. Over in Daniel, the popular story, the story that we've read many times, where Nebuchadnezzar had a dream. And he called in who? The Chaldeans that we just talked about that came in to interpret the dream. And they couldn't do it. He said, this is impossible. So someone said, hey, this Daniel over here, he can interpret this dream. And he said, well, give me time. You know what I like about this also? I've talked to Ryan about the friends that we have in this life and how close we should keep good Christian friends. Daniel went to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and I know that was their Babylonian names. I try to remember their Jewish names. I think that's more important. He went to them and asked them to pray with him. And I told him, I said, I've always had something, I said, there's this, in my mind, we should have fire-type friends, ones who's willing to walk through the fire with us. And he went to them and said, you pray with me that God will give me this vision. And we know this, a lot of us know this vision. And this is going pointing back to that kingdom that points to Jesus Christ. In 31, was that the first bell? Okay, this won't take long. Chapter 2 of Daniel, this is his vision. He says, thou king sawest, and behold, a great image. This great image whose, the king had dreamed about, he's telling him the dream that he had. And he wouldn't tell Daniel what it was. He said, you tell me what I dreamed. That sounds impossible, don't it? That's why the Chaldeans say, we can't do that. You want me to tell you what your dream was, and you're not going to tell me what your dream was? Daniel's telling him what his dream was. That's how the king, he was smart, he was wise. He knew that if you could do this, then your God is real. He says, thou, O king, sawest, and behold, a great image. This was a great image whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible. This image's head was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, and his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet part of iron, and part of clay. Thou sawest till that a stone, and thou sawest till that a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon the feet that were of iron and clay, and brake them into pieces. Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, the gold broken to pieces together, and became like chaff of the summer, threshing floor. And the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain, and filled the whole earth. He dreamed of this big statue, and it had all the finest things in it, just like Solomon seen it had in that temple, just like Rome had, just like Babylon had, and these great kingdoms. This image represented the kingdoms of this world. That's what it represented. We heard us sing that song, I heard about a stone that came rolling out of Babylon. And it said that this stone that was cut without hands, it was from the very beginning. It wasn't created. Came rolling out of the mountain and crushed the foot of this because it was built with clay. It was built by man. And it destroyed that statue and brought it to pieces, and it said it was blown away. And what that was basically what that dream was saying, that all the kingdoms of this world will not stand. That the kingdom of God will destroy all of it. And that kingdom will, I like what it said there. It said, place was found, there was no place, and there's nothing left of them. And that image, that stone, I like it, became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. One of these days, this earth, it's going to be burnt with fire, and it's going to be a new heaven and a new earth, and he's going to be the king of that, and that kingdom will not fall. We'll go over here to 40, I believe it's 44, verse 44. And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break into pieces and consume all the kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. Isn't that? I'm glad that he didn't end here when that earthly temple was destroyed, and it looked like it was over. It looked like the worship between God and man was over. That's what that temple represented, a place that we could go and worship. I'm glad it didn't end there. It looked like it ended there, but it didn't end there. And I like how it said there right at the end of that chapter. I never caught that. It didn't stop there. It says, but Jehoiakim, God's promise to David, was fulfilled. That he would bring that kingdom that will last forever through his bloodline. And that was Jesus Christ. Anybody want to add before we dismiss? He predicted something, you say it might not happen, but then he says it, you can count on it. That's a good point. That's something I think I would stay away from that book just for that. Yeah. The plan of God was predestined before the foundation of the world. That means it was before time. God's outside of time. We can't, it's hard for us to picture being outside of time, but that's all we know. But God is outside of time. He sees it, the whole thing. Sees it all. And that plan of salvation, he knew that man would fall. He knew that I would fall. People say, well, if it weren't for Adam's sin, we wouldn't be in this condition. If this Adam, this first Adam, would have been in that garden, Brother Bruce, I'd have fell too. We all fell. We all fell to sin. Every one of us. Brother Darrell, you want to dismiss us, please?